Yes.
We do still have customers who are out of service. And the just over 200 number on the VoIP side of it is one group of customers. I will also mention that, sometimes it's hard to tell exactly which services are impacted because of what. And because this is a software situation, some of the examples you gave of I don't have all the channels that I had, and I don't mean to paraphrase too much, but you were mentioning the various services we have. The important piece of it is if we can get the provisioning to the ONT in the proper manner, then all the services come back up. But the other piece of a software environment is, and this is part of what happened, which is not necessarily a trouble issue, but it certainly is a customer experience disruption that we hadn't intended, is when you do a system conversion and you have scripts running through the system, then in a software environment, it might result in you needing to reboot your set-top in order to go ahead and reset what's in the home. It's likened maybe to sometimes you need to reboot your phone or you need to reboot some electronic device. It's not a good thing. I'm just mentioning it because there was much of that needed to happen. I happened to live in a neighborhood. I was on Nextdoor, of course, as we all were, as part of just locally trying to get ahead of this thing. And I realized that, and many of you may have read about the squirrel that ate the fiber, and it's true. It was not conversion related, but guess what? When we went in and we fixed the hub and spliced the fiber back, then almost every single person in my neighborhood, it felt like, needed to reboot their set-top. And I helped them do that myself or others in the organization through me, one at a time. But those are also examples of, in this time period, April being the critical time period, people in Long Beach, in Long Beach, it's our largest community, very important to us. You might be surprised to know or not that the number of conversion-related trouble in Long Beach was somewhere around 1,500. Probably felt like more than that, but I'm telling you.
It certainly sounded like more than like that.
It sounded like that Saturday.
And I've got to challenge you on that because when it's, my mother, my neighbor, my own home.
Understood.
And then I show up at a community meeting and there's probably, 300 people that came through here that day. I'm sure it's many more than the number you've quoted.
So maybe there was 250 or so there, sure. And we took 131 meetings afterwards.
Which was great, and we appreciate you being on site with the technicians to address the problems. We appreciate that. But I have to challenge you on the number you've shared with us today. I think it's much greater than that.
Well, see, okay.
Just listen. How many people? These are people down the street from me that are coming to my door.
Yes.
So if you extrapolate that across my district, it's many more than the number you quoted.
Okay.
And I would just build on that a little bit. Everybody on this dais is in the public communications business, for lack of a better word, and we all get comments from people who are happy and people who are disgruntled all year round.
Sure.
I took 5,897 votes in the last 2-year session. And on every bill, there's somebody who's very emotionally tied to it. And we hear from the public on those bills. I think my office received 57,000 emails last year on bills. But on this issue, judging by the volume of correspondence and the passion and the emails, this is a lot of people who have problems. I completely agree with what Mr. O'Donnell is saying. I mean, even if there's a really controversial bill, we might get 50 emails on that bill, and that's a lot. But with this, we're seeing hundreds, thousands of emails. I mean, hundreds, thousands of people knocking on our doors in some certain cases. So, these numbers, and you always say in politics that there's only a certain number of people who speak up. It might be 1% of the population who actually knows how to contact their assembly member or knows how to find the email to file a complaint at the PUC. So, judging by the size and the volume of the complaints we've received, I think this problem is pretty big.
Mr. Chair, if I may, could we get just one question with regard to the service backup? I don't know that you really clarified to me as to what your plan is to address the existing backlog.
So we have a couple of initiatives. First and foremost, where we have trouble tickets that are in the backlog, we have been, over the past 2 weeks, basically taking, doubling to tripling the size of the number of techs in that area for the day or days. And we've just been going into the community, setting everything up for that particular set of days, and just taking care of it. Long Beach was one where we did that last week. I believe it was Tuesday and Wednesday. It might have been Wednesday, Thursday, and we got the backlog down to less than 80.
So you're bringing techs from out of town. In this instance, you flooded Long Beach
of our
with
markets,
your regional,
as well as contractors. At one point in time in Long Beach, where we typically have about 55, 60 FiOS techs in one particular day, we had about 150 techs in there, just to make sure.
So
that
do you know how long it will take you to clean up the backlog to what you consider a
Yes. By our
reasonable or average
calculations, to get us to what we call business as usual, we always have a backlog. I think that it will take us about 10 days.
10 more days?
10 more days.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have Mr. Obernolt who's been waiting, and then Mr. Hadley after him. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. White, I want to thank you for your willingness to come testify before the committee. It's very helpful. I have to take issue, like my colleagues have, of your characterization of this as a small problem. And I realize that you say that one outage is too many, but I have to tell you, in my time in office, this issue has set a record for the number of my constituents that have reached out to my office for help. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds. And our metric that we usually use is if one constituent is calling the office, that means that at least 10 and probably several hundred constituents are having the same problem and not calling. So that's a large number of people. I wanted just to put a human face on it, I wanted to share with you some specific constituents that have called my office with the problems they've had. We got a call from an elderly woman in Jess Ranch. She has some medical issues, and so she has a live alert system. She has to summon emergency medical help. She had a problem, was unable to summon that because her phone was out. I've got a note here from the Deputy District Attorney for the County of San Bernardino that the Victorville, San Bernardino Attorney's Office was completely down because their phones were out. I've got a note here from some constituents in Apple Valley. Their home was burglarized. It has an alarm system on it. The alarm was set. The alarm went off, but the police were not summoned, even though the sheriff's department is 2 minutes away from their house. The thieves made off with a large number of their possessions, and we have a follow-up note that just last week someone applied for a credit card in their name. So, I mean, it's having a huge impact on the people that depend on us to represent them. So I wanted to share that with you. And I also had a question for you. Knowing ahead of time that this was going to be one of the largest cutovers in history, why was it not more risk-averse to take a different approach to doing the cutover? Because you negotiated the agreement with Verizon. Couldn't you have done a rolling cutover where you just rolled over a portion of the network every day for 30 days or something like that, just so that the system would have more capacity to deal with these issues? Because, as you say, these issues are inevitable. But it seems like also, to me at least, that the problems that we're experiencing were also inevitable given the number of connections that you cut over at the same time.
So, first of all, I didn't mean to imply small in the sense of unimportant. Never my intent. And every example you gave, and many more that I know that I have worked with personally, there have been some painful moments, absolutely, which is one reason that we haven't stopped working since day one. Your question about why a flash cutover, why this way, it's a good one. The fact is that 6 years ago, the 2010 acquisition, where we bought about 14 states from Verizon, we did something completely different. It was a 3-year conversion. That has a different kind of pain as well. In this particular situation, and by the way, I did not have anything to do with, and I'm not trying not to be accountable, I just didn't have anything to do with the transaction, with the negotiation of the agreement. It appears that both parties felt that the flash cutover would be the right plan, given the network and also given the various parties' needs in terms of what needed to be done as a part of getting this transaction done.
Okay, well, I mean, just stating the obvious here, but these problems with the corrupted data extracts, certainly if you had cut over just a portion of the network, it would have been discovered that that was going to be an issue and extrapolated across the whole network. It's easy to see how customer support and technicians would be overwhelmed. So just in hindsight, I mean, I realize it's not helpful, but in hindsight, it certainly seems like a more risk-averse approach would have been warranted.
Yeah, that's true. It feels like you understand the operation a bit. So just quickly, whatever we had decided, whether it was a 3-year or a 3-day or a 30-minute transaction, the fact is that we would have only been able to see so far into the network, and that would be just through the CO to the core router. That's all we could have seen until day one operation. And so if we had done a 3-year and we had gone ahead and step by step, we would have had the same issue. If the data extracts were affecting a certain type of equipment, we probably would have had the same situation. It would have just come later, and maybe more people would have known us, would have loved us, would have, fill in the blank us, and it wouldn't have been so startling, which was, I think surely you would agree that part of this opportunity for us is this is certainly not the way we meant to introduce ourselves to California. But a lot of folks called us and are still calling us just trying to say, who are you? I'm not trying to diminish the fact that many have tried to get in touch with us to say, I need help.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're talking about two different issues, really. In your point that some of these problems would have arisen anyway, even if it had been more gradual, is certainly true. However, you would have had the capacity to deal with that because it wouldn't have overwhelmed your customer support options as it did. And
Possibly.
Part of the challenge here for us is that our job is to oversee these kinds of utility operations, and we feel like that maybe in the future we need to exercise more oversight over these kinds of mergers and acquisitions when these kinds of problems arise. But thank you again for your willingness to testify. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So just a quick announcement for those of you in the audience that I know at some point we're going to get to the public comment portion of this. You can get a public comment card from the sergeant, and if you want to speak, please fill it out, and we will call you in due turn. Let's go to Mr. Hadley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, thank you for calling this hearing. It's a valuable hearing for our constituents and for ourselves. As you know, Ms. White, I represent the South Bay, Los Angeles. You've done something that I thought would be hard to do, which is I've gotten more calls about this than I have about a refinery explosion in Torrance, which I do think does speak to the magnitude of the issues and the number of constituents who have struggled with this. I do appreciate your responsiveness. When my office and I have reached out to you, and I can only imagine how hard you and your team are working since April 1st. My question is really about trying to get to an apples to apples. We've talked about the number of trouble tickets you had outstanding prior to the April 1st cutover. We've talked about the current VoIP folks out of service being in the hundreds and the backlog, but. I suspect, knowing a little bit about your business, that trouble tickets are sort of how you run your operation on these. And so maybe we can stick with this and just try to go apples to apples. If you headed into April 1st with 16,000 outstanding trouble tickets, what did you spike to in the days or weeks after April 1st? What was your high point for outstanding problems that were in your system, and what are you down to now?
So I'll have to get back to you with that number.
Okay.
But I will.
Is that because that's some sort of corporate secret?
No.
Or is it? Could you give Mr. Hadley a ballpark? I mean, this is our hearing on this, and we'd like to answer if at all possible.
I would love to answer the question specifically, but I don't want to give you the wrong number, and that is not a number that I have with me. And one of the things that I, as you know, have is the trouble tickets that are of all flavors.
For lots of different reasons.
That's right. So when I say to you, in any given month I could have and I'll just do the average, 50,000 trouble tickets, there's a piece of those that are out of service, which are the ones you're interested in. Every month, whether I do a conversion or not, I have out of service situations because I'm a provider, and unfortunately, that's just part of what we deal with every single day. And then there would be the trouble tickets that are about, my channel is flickering and I don't know why, and that's usually something that has to do at the head end with the satellite feed, and it could be driven by the national content provider, but still something that we need to get fixed. So there's a whole gamut of pieces that drive the total trouble number.
No, and I recognize that, and I know there's no one perfect measurement of network challenges. I mean, my household is a FiOS Now Frontier household, and I mean, I'm not going to compare our issues with the serious problems that some of my constituents and neighbors have had. You know, we have some TV issues. We have not placed a phone call about them because we've read in the press, and I know from my day job that there's a lot of people ahead of us in the queue. So you're going to be seeing those, I think, in the weeks and months ahead as you get through the worst of this, hopefully in the next 10 days or less, as you answered Assemblymember O'Donnell. So I would appreciate as prompt as you can an answer on just what the spike looked like and how far down the mountain we are from a trouble ticket standpoint.
So one of the things that you noted, I would like to mention that we, too, were trying to figure out how do we get in front of, instead of waiting until as people finally got to us. And this is, again, back to just not being able to be as effective as we had planned with our call center strategy. So only because in another state at a point in time, I had an email called letmelinda@ftr.com. It was still active. We quickly got it out there through David Lazarus at the LA Times, and we put that out at the end of the second week. And since then, we've actually taken in close to 4,000 emails, and not all out of service, the whole gamut, but still, you have an 800 number. You think that when you dial it, you're going to get someone who can help you no matter what your question is. That wasn't happening. So we, too, have been working in many ways to try to make sure that there are not more Assemblymember Hadleys out there who just didn't want to call us yet, but eventually will.
And
could you?
And I have shared let Melinda know at ftr.com liberally. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we talked about a little bit about the time to get everything back into a working condition. We've talked a little bit about the problems with the offshore customer service firm. Could you talk a little bit about this issue of missed appointments? There's one family in Thousand Oaks, the Sorensen family. They lost their service on April 21. Frontier made an appointment with them on April 22, 23, 25, 26, and 27, and missed all 5. So it's one thing to have a huge backlog. It's another thing to have a call center that is not answering people in a way that they feel treated with respect. But it's another thing altogether to have an appointment ticket made that's in a system, presumably somewhere, and somebody takes a day off work and waits, and then you've got this family with 5 missed appointments. What causes that to happen?
One, the call center did not actually enter a trouble ticket, yet the customer was told that we would be out on a certain day. That's been very hard for us to get our arms around. We have seen that happen more times than we could have imagined. 2, the accountability is with me in the resource planning and allocation, not planning for this type of event. Therefore, only being able to cover so many tickets per tech per day, and getting to the end of the day and not having enough sunshine to keep going. We have a process in place where the techs, if after a certain time period, if they know they're not going to get their job done, then the tech or the supervisor actually contacts the customer and ensures that they know that we will not make it. Clearly, some have fallen through. in the early part of April, and this is the part that really hurt us when the volume was really showing, our techs back to their training, they essentially had 1 day of training, and this was a new system for them, a new tool for them, new software, new provisioning, new everything. The only thing that the techs really knew how to do was get out to the customer, interact with the customer. They knew enough. It was the same ONT, it was the same set top, it was the same router, but there was a different process now and program if something needed to happen to any of those devices. So early out of the gate, we were very slow with the customer resolutions. A tech may have come in with 2 completed every day. It's not the tech's fault. It was part of the plan, knowing that it would take a while to get them ramped up, and they had support systems throughout the company. But again, we didn't plan on this type of volume. Today, that same tech, 5 weeks later, is completing 5 or 6 trouble tickets a day, because they too have been able to ramp and get into the rhythm that was needed. We just needed that sooner, and we didn't have the resources necessary.
Okay.
I want to mention quickly, since we're talking about the disappointment with the customer, we are proactively issuing credits to every customer who we have interacted with who has been out of service. If they are still in our queue and they are not resolved yet, we are waiting until we resolve, but we have let the customer know that as soon as they are resolved, then we will be issuing a credit. And we have a process in place in California where we will be able to make sure that all of the customers impacted no later than the June bill. Some have already received their credits, and I hope you're hearing from those folks to confirm that, and then some will not be receiving credits until their June bill cycle.
And hopefully later we'll get into this issue of compensation, because I think it's important, not just from a bill credit standpoint, but if you're a restaurant who lost a number of days of processing credit cards, or for that matter any small business, a bill credit might be $20, but it might not accurately compensate. So we'll get into that. I know there's another question from Ms. Melendez, and we're going to recognize her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, Ms. White, I'm just going to be very direct.
Yeah.
You've given a lot of detailed answers to our questions, and I know it's not easy sitting there, so I appreciate your desire to fully answer everyone's questions, but I'm going to be very direct with you, and I just want a simple answer.
Sure.
The first question is, how many people do you have now to handle these complaints? You'd mentioned you'd hired 5,346 new reps. Did I hear that right?
5,300 and some change new reps.
Okay, so
but those folks are going to go away and have already started going away, because now, thankfully, we're bringing on the employees who have been trained. They started coming on the phones and into the support roles the week of May 2nd. So by the end, no later than the end of July, we will be 100% U.S.-based again with our employees.
Okay, so what? How many people do you have today to handle these issues that our customers are having, that our constituents are having?
The total call center number across the company is, with the additional that is still on board, is somewhere around 10,000 reps.
And
now,
how many of those are in the continental United States?
I would say...
We'll take Hawaii and Alaska, too. We just want to know how many of them are... We just want to know how many of them are here.
75%-ish of them are in the U.S.
75%. Okay.
Yes.
And then the next question is, when do you expect to have these issues resolved for the most part? I mean, you'll have some outstanding issues, but do you have a timeline?
We do.
Okay, and what is that?
First is the backlog, in ensuring that we have that resolved over the next 10 days. We have a plan based upon our resources, and that is more about field resources and support network technicians. The full system resolution on everything and anything, and now I didn't want to, but now I have to bring up video on demand, because while that's not a service outage, that's not what I know we're talking about, it certainly has been a disappointment. So when I look at the full video on demand included, making sure everybody has access to all the titles that they had before, and also have access to the movies that they have purchased in their history, I will say that we expect to have everything resolved no later than mid-June.
Wow.
On the technical piece, which is maybe I think what we're talking about, I believe that we have the resolution in place on the technical piece. Now it's just cleaning up the backlog and making sure that
And when do you anticipate having that done?
10 days.
So in 10 days, everyone's issues should be resolved.
In 10 days, we will have all of the backlog cleaned up, and we will start moving into a business as usual mode, which we've already started moving in. And then when we sit down next, hopefully over coffee, but when we sit down next, I'll say, hey, we had 50,000 trouble tickets this month, because that's what we have every month. But it will not be related to missing serial numbers or bad data. It will be business as usual. I wish I could say to you we never have any trouble, but that's just not the way it is.
Well, and we understand that I mean, that's the business you're in.
Yes.
Somebody always has an issue. I think what we're trying to get to is the heart of, because of the changeover of these lines, the changing of hands, when will the issues be resolved that were the result of that changeover? That's really all we want to know.
What, 10 days or at the end of this
10
month?
days.
Because the issues are already resolved. We're cleaning up the backlog.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is something a little extraordinary for our hearings. Is we're going to there's members of the public who came all the way to Sacramento to talk to us, and what I want to make sure is give them a voice too. We've asked a lot of questions from the dais as well. We're going to quickly go to some public comments as they have comments or questions for Frontier. We still have to hear from the CPUC, and we're going to do that too, and we're going to take more questions from up here. But those of you who put in cards, if you could just line up in an orderly fashion, and we want to make sure that all of you are. No, you can stay here. You can stay here, and we want to make sure that you're heard. Just keep your comments brief. It's not for us that you're keeping your comments brief. It's for the person in line behind you. We just ask that you are respectful and make sure that everybody else can ask their question or comments. So don't be shy. Go ahead and line up at the mic, and we'll get to you in turn, and we'll get some answers for you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Paul Gonzalez, representing the city of Thousand Oaks. Thousand Oaks has received hundreds and thousands of phone calls and complaints from constituents and businesses. They have Frontier, who will be coming out to their city council hearing next month, I believe, to be given a presentation and answer some questions there as well. We feel that Frontier should be coming out with some type of action plan to be sharing with our constituents to be able to give them some answers moving forward. So we thank you very much for this hearing, and we support your findings. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tom Freeman, I'm from Santa Monica.
Thank you for coming all the way up here.
Thank you. I'm trying to get my hands around this notion that only less than 1% of the transition people have been impacted. And I don't know exactly what type of, way these statistics are being calculated. Maybe I'm sort of gathering from the discussion here that video on demand, people who aren't getting services they're paying for, like premium services, Showtime, HBO, they don't really count. That in 10 days everybody's going to get everything, but these people were charging $200 a month for maybe by middle of June. We got the bills out, by the way. We get the bills out really good, and those bills don't include, by the way, the discounts that if you call into the call lines and you spend 40 minutes waiting to talk to somebody and then 20 minutes talking to somebody, then putting you on hold and saying, okay, well, we can give you $20 off your bill for this period of time. You're going to have to call back in June because we know you still haven't. So there's a whole thing going on here. And by the way, when they look me up and see where I live, there's no ticket item, whatever the term is. There's no trouble ticket being created. The assumption is that they can't fix the problem. So I don't know if that's how their statistics get that way. Nobody's ever offered to come out and fix my problem. The implication they always have is, oh, we're having service problems in your area. And by the way, those service problems aren't the same. They change. It's like at first, it was like, gosh, I'm not getting showtime. What happened? Oh, it's April 1, this new thing happened. Then all of a sudden, my HBO went out. And then all of a sudden, I can't get, some goofy, like FX or something. So, and then it's like I can't get any video on demand. It just keeps changing throughout the process. I just had a computer guy over. I didn't realize that I was having a problem with my internet. I didn't even think of it. It's like, no, it's you're paying for a service you're not getting. Your ping, whatever that is down to 7. So, and nobody's ever offered to come out, which is really amazing. And look, I know there are businesses that have like a lot of hard money that's being lost here, and that's certainly a concern. But this is really sort of in the nature of a sort of a massive consumer issue here. You have a company that made a multi-billion-dollar deal and basically did this transition on the cheap. They did the whole thing in a moment's notice. They knew full well that there were going to be serious problems. And anyways, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Rapoy, and I'm a staff representative with the Communication Workers of America. We represent approximately 4,000 members that are working for Frontier Communications. Since the transition of April the 1st, our members have been working tirelessly to restore the service to the California customers. We're committed to working until this problem is resolved together. In the past, we have not had a good relationship with Verizon. They did not invest in the workers or in the network. During the hearings held by the PUC, CWA expressed serious concerns because all the workers were not going to be trained prior to the transition, and Verizon's lack of investment in maintaining the outside plant or the network. We, CWA, do have a good relationship with Frontier so far. Our members are proud of their careers in the industry and have doubled their efforts to focus on the customers, their needs in these times, and we're appreciative of the relationship with the customers who haven't changed from Frontier. Again, CWA is committed with Frontier to work together to provide solutions to the customer service problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Ramus. I'm the general manager of the Cosumnes Community Services District, which we are the largest CSD in the state. We provide parks and recreation and fire protection and emergency medical services to the cities of Galt and Elk Grove and the southern portion of Sacramento County. And we've had a long partnership with Frontier. Last year, 15 months ago actually, we had a devastating fire in our administration building, wiped out about 75% of our building, including all of our services. Obviously, being public safety, critical for us to have those services up and running. So we had, with our partnership with Frontier, and I've got my information systems manager here with me as well. He's my IT guy who handles all this stuff. But I want him to talk about a little bit about the outstanding work that Frontier did for us that day and other times.
Thank you, Jeff. Like he said, I'm Jack Haddon. I'm the IT manager for Cosumnes Community Services District. I've been with the district for 16 years, and Frontier has been our telecommunications provider for that time. We've had Frontier since before they were even called Frontier. So it's we've had a long history with them. And, we've had some ups and downs, but I think once you get to know Frontier the way we know Frontier, and once they get past these transition issues that you may be experiencing, I think you'll find that the customer experience they provide is second to none. They've been our partners. They take the local...
Let me just interrupt you right there.
Sure.
And I'm not going to cut off a member of the public. This is your legislature. You can talk about whatever you want within the boundaries of this hearing. But this is a hearing about how we're going to resolve the issues and specifically what the legislature can do, what we can do in terms of our oversight of the CPUC. We recognize there are many happy Frontier customers in the world. We are appreciative that they are providing landline service, which is a rare service these days. But we don't need any testimonials from happy customers. I'm sure there's lots of people happy with Frontier. We recognize that. But we're trying to get to the bottom of what we can do to solve the issues with the transition. And it doesn't sound like yours had to do with the transition, right?
Sure. No, and I'm just hoping to bring some positivity and hope to the conversation, but I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for the hope.